You're with Money FM 89.3. The afternoon update, only on Money FM 89.3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon update on Money FM 89.3. Hello to all of you joining us on social media as well, on YouTube, Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm Rachel Kelly.
And I'm Hongbin Jung.
And coming up on the show in the next hour, in just a bit, we'll have Sustainable Singapore for you. And we're going to have two options. On your radio station, we're going to have a special Stewcast for you. That is an interview with Martin Houston, who is the vice chair of Tellurian. He's going to talk about the future of LNG and the part that LNG plays in the energy transition. On social media, on Facebook, since it's F1 week, we're going to be speaking with Jack Ling, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Alphabiofuels. We're going to be talking about an interesting initiative. They're actually going to be fueling the Formula One this weekend with locally sourced used cooking oil. They've turned that into biofuels to fuel the F1. He's going to tell us more. But first, we're going to check in on the markets with Hongbin.
Money FM 89.3. Financial updates from the Business Times.
So we'll start off by having a look and seeing where Singapore shares are at this hour. Taking a look at the Straits Times Index in the green, up just over 0.5% at 3,134 points. Advancers just leading the pack today, 267 to 224 decliners. In terms of volume so far today, 861.4 million securities worth $954 million have changed hands so far. Hongbin's been keeping an eye on a number of stocks for you. We're going to start off and talk about SATS. We spoke about it earlier in the show. We promised you an update, and here it is, because shares of SATS down over 20% today. Hongbin, what's happening?
Yeah, shares are actually currently down around 20.4% at $3.08. And if you've missed earlier, that's because after SATS has agreed to buy the world's largest air cargo handler, Worldwide Flight Services, at an enterprise value of £2.25 billion, or about 3.1 billion Singapore dollars. And this is a move which will elevate the Singapore-listed firm to be a leader in the aviation services. So SATS plans to fund the deal through a $1.7 billion equity fundraising, with the rest drawn from internal cash resources, and it confirmed last week that it was in ongoing discussions with Cerberus Capital Management to acquire the air cargo handler after Bloomberg News reported that it was in talks for a potential deal. But, it's a good deal, but despite this deal, we're seeing shares of SATS plunging sharply to a 2-year low. And that's because the company will make a rights issue of 609 million new shares at $2.79 per share to raise the bulk of the funds. So this, according to some analysts, say would depress SAT's theoretical ex-rights price to $3.49 per share. And because markets do not like rights issues, and some analysts say while this deal is a good one for SATS in the longer term, it makes the company a formidable global air cargo player. The market can be short-sighted at times. But despite the negativity at the moment, with the shares plunging to nearly a 2-year low, many market insiders seem sanguine about the longer-term prospects for the company, and they say that investors will ultimately make a judgment on the merits of the deal and its contribution to the bottom line.
Okay, Hongbin, you've also been keeping an eye on Keppel Corp and Nanofilm Technologies. What's happening there?
So for Keppel Corporation, a wholly owned subsidiary of the group's offshore and marine arm, has secured a repeat contract for a new build floating production, storage, and offloading vessel that's worth about $2.8 billion US. And this will bring Keppel O&M's net order book to some 11.8 billion Singapore dollars as of September 28th, which is the highest since 2007. And shares of Keppel Corp closed at around $6.76, which is down 3% prior to the announcement, but shares are currently up 3.6% to $7. And with Nanofilm Technologies, its subsidiary has entered into a joint venture with an initial registered capital of 50 million yen or 10 million Singapore dollars with two Chinese companies. So the JV, the joint venture, will provide coating solutions for advanced battery components and systems in electric vehicles as well as energy storage applications in China. And so Nano shares ended yesterday down 2.4% at $2.08 before the news, and it's currently down around 1.4% at $2.05.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a four-letter word that has been terrorizing the crypto landscape, and that is hack. Hackers have terrorized the crypto industry for years, and there's an article that you've picked up from the Straits Times that highlights some of the key concerns and trends there, Hongbin.
So basically, this article on the Straits Times, which is titled "Crypto World on Edge After String of Hacks with $3.2 billion Stolen from DeFi Projects." So basically, this article starts off with a story about this guy called Mr. Ben Winthrop, who woke up to some bad news after dropping out of college to pursue a career in cryptocurrency. So him and his two classmates from the University of Chicago, they spent the past few months working on a software platform called Beanstalk. And to their surprise, it became an overnight sensation. It attracted crypto speculators who viewed it as an exciting contribution to the experimental field of decentralized finance. But it collapsed. So in April, a hacker exploited a flaw in Beanstalk's design to steal more than 180 million US dollars or 259 million Singapore dollars from users. So based on this, the article highlights that the hackers have terrorized the crypto industry for years. It's stealing Bitcoin from online wallets and raiding the exchanges where investors buy and sell digital currencies. But the rapid proliferation of DeFi startups like Beanstalk has given rise to a new type of threat. So these are loosely regulated ventures that allow people to borrow and lend and conduct other transactions without banks or brokers. So it seems like using this DeFi software, investors can take out loans without even revealing their identities or even undergoing a credit check, which means like it's subject to a lot of hacks, right? So this year, $2.2 billion in cryptocurrencies has been stolen from DeFi projects, according to crypto tracking firm Chainalysis, and it's putting the overall industry on pace for its worst year of hacking losses. And so many of these thefts have stemmed from the flaws in the computer system, computer programs known as smart contracts that power DeFi, and the programs are often built hastily, and because smart contracts use open source code, it provides a publicly viewable map of the software, and hackers, they've been able to orchestrate attacks on these digital infrastructure itself.
Okay, Hongbin, thanks for that update. For those of you who invest in crypto, you want to go and check out the rest of that article. It's on the Straits Times website. It's called Crypto World on Edge After String of Hacks with 3 billion. Is it 3 billion? It's more than that. It's 320 million.
3.2 billion.
3.2 billion. There you go. 3.2 billion. Thanks, Hongbin. 3.2 billion Singapore dollars stolen from DeFi projects. Stay with us here on Money FM 89.3. We've got Sustainable Singapore coming up next.
Get up to speed with all the news and information you need to confidently make the decisions for your business and personal finance with The Breakfast Huddle, Your Money, 12 to 1, The Afternoon Update, and Prime Time. Every weekday on Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station. Sustainable
And thanks for staying with us here on social media. We do have Singapore Sustainable Singapore coming up for you now. And since it's F1 week and we do have the racetracks laid out ready for race weekend, did you know that this year the F1 will be partially fueled by sustainable sources?
Like what sources?
Okay, so spectators and participants at this month's Singapore Formula One Grand Prix might not be able to see it, hear, or feel the difference, but the race will be powered by locally sourced and internationally certified used cooking oil. It's being used for the first time to provide a sustainable alternative fuel. Alphabiofuels will provide at least 3,000 liters of locally produced used cooking oil, biodiesel to fuel the race. To tell us more, we are joined now by the Chief Operating Officer of Alphabiofuels, Jack Ling. Jack, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us, Jack. So let's talk about this sustainable fuel, these biofuel that's made out of used cooking oil. Where does the oil come from? I understand houses, hawker centers, F&B restaurants.
Yeah, the used cooking oil that is sourced for alpha biodiesel comes mainly from commercial kitchens in Singapore. So you're talking about hotels, commercial caterers, and your average hawker centers and restaurants. Uh, yeah, so households not so much because it's a bit more difficult to collect, but mostly from commercial kitchens.
So, how much cooking oil do you actually collect on average before we get into what's happening for race weekend this weekend?
We collect about 100 tons of cooking oil a month, and that is not a lot in the Singapore context, but that's enough to power our needs for the land and construction use in Singapore.
So, where do you use the fuel at the moment before we get into the use for F1 weekend? What else is it being used for?
Yeah, currently most of our biofuel customers are in the logistics sector, meaning trucks. So we have vans, lorries, prime movers, as well as construction sites. So on a construction site, it typically powers generators and forklifts.
This is really interesting. And Alpha Biofuels, you've been around for over a decade, if I'm not wrong. I
Yep.
remember, I think I visited you guys when you launched the plant a number of years ago. So perhaps
Mhm.
you can tell us how you've evolved since then.
Yeah, so we've gone through a bit of a technological uh, transformation. So originally, we used to make biodiesel the traditional way, which means we take the used cooking oil, we have to heat it up, and then we add our chemicals and alcohol to refine it into biodiesel. But about 9 years ago, we managed to come up with a technology with our European technology partner, and we designed and custom built a machine, a biodiesel reactor that removes the heating element. So instead of
Right.
needing to heat it up, we can now convert biodiesel at room temperature, which saves a lot of energy. And because biodiesel in Alpha Biofuel, we're very much involved in the reduction of carbon emissions for our final product, removing this heat, which uses electricity, brings down the carbon footprint of Alpha Biodiesel by quite a significant amount.
So you're dipping into the science there. Help us to
Yeah,
understand the process that this cooking oil goes through. So it's been used, you collect it. What
yeah.
happens next?
So this cooking oil, waste cooking oil that we collect from restaurants are whatever's left in the fryer, or imagine a deep fryer where you fry fish and chips. So after it's being used for a few times, it has to be discarded. We would give the restaurants proper containers where they would dispose the used cooking oil, and then it is trucked to our plant in Tuas, where after some simple filtration, it actually goes through a chemical process. It's a bit technical, but it's called transesterification, where the cooking oil we add an alcohol and a catalyst, and after in our system, after less than a minute, biodiesel is formed. But this biodiesel still needs to go through some cleaning steps, polishing. So within 24 hours, we can have from your dirty oil that comes from the fryer into clean biodiesel that can be used to power any diesel equipment, cars. We've even started powering coastal crafts. Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating because this oil would otherwise be thrown away, right? I mean, it would be wasted.
Yes, in Singapore context, it's thrown away. In other countries where uh, they might use it as agricultural filler, or in the old times they use it to make soap. But I think nowadays people don't use bar soaps anymore. So yeah, it's actually a
I
waste
still
product.
use bar soaps, Jack.
But but those probably come from easier to work with sources, because you can imagine to collect used cooking oil from different restaurants. Like we go to different restaurants every day. Each day's oil is of a different character. Some are a bit dirtier. The quality is not so good. So for commercial production of like soaps, there's a lot of purification involved. So I think yeah, it's finding less and less users as soap making and other products.
Does it make a difference, the type of oil or the type of restaurant that you get the oil from when you're making the
No,
biodiesel?
no, we
It
can
doesn't
make
matter.
biodiesel
Any
from
waste.
any organic based oil. So it can be, in Asia it's mostly palm based, but we do have, like, from Japanese restaurants, or Western restaurants that use olive oil, canola oil. We can even use animal fats, but that is not something that is easily available in Singapore, because we don't have that much abattoirs. Yeah.
So let's get into what's happening this weekend with the F1 and Alpha
Mhm.
Biofuels. How are you powering the F1 this weekend with your used cooking oil biofuel?
So for Singapore GPF1, they use a lot of energy, and I don't think it's enough to get all the energy from the grid. So for the past more than 10 years, they've supplemented the energy requirements with using on-site diesel generators. So this is the first time that we are involved with the diesel generators. So because it's the first time, we're taking it, baby steps, one step at a time. We've just been used to power one generator at the F&B dock site. So this one generator out of, I think, about 130 other generators all over the Singapore track. Yeah. So we're just going to power one for this year, and if everything goes well, fingers crossed, we'll power more next year.
So this is a trial this year, but I mean,
That's
you
right.
say one generator, but it's a big step,
Hmm.
isn't it, in terms of
Correct.
sustainability? Because that's been a key hot topic of discussion when it comes to F1, these kind of races, the energy consumption that's used with the lighting, with the crowds, with the
Hmm.
concerts, not to mention the cars. So this is just one small step on the path to sustainability when it comes to F1. How did this conversation come about for Alpha Biofuels and the F1 organizers?
Yeah, so from the very beginning, the F1 people already know of Alpha Biofuels, because we have been their waste oil disposal partner since the beginning. So every year we collect the used cooking oil, and they know that biodiesel can be used, but due to technical and other issues, they're not ready to try it. But I think this year, with the pandemic and people knowing more about sustainability. So we finally decided that this is the year that we should start the first step towards getting cleaner green power, and yeah, and that's why we are involved.
So you're going to be on site there this weekend, Jack,
Yes,
to
all across the
watch
weekend.
the
Yes,
watch the generator and watch the race as well, right?
yeah, that's right.
Okay, so maybe you can tell us then what's next for Alpha Biofuels. What else are you working on?
Yeah, so I've mentioned previously we've been powering land-based vehicles. So in the old days, taxis. Now not so much. People are getting into EVs, but for commercial vehicles, your vans, your prime mover, it's still a very they are still relying on diesel a lot, as well as construction equipment. But in the last 1 year, we have done quite a bit of trials into maritime use. So that involves both the coastal craft, that means the craft that is around Singapore, that means your tugboats and those small passenger crafts, to ocean liners and potentially cruise vessels, where hopefully, people joining a cruise can know that the cruise ship is powered by sustainable energy. So we are looking forward to being involved in the maritime industry.
So, from the maritime, I'm going to bring you back on the roads now. We've got another question that's come in from one of our listeners. Hongbin, perhaps you can share that question with Jack.
Yeah, well, you did kind of answer that question in your previous answer, but Roshan has asked, can alpha biofuels be used for everyday cars too? And I want to add on to this question, like how soon can we see them being used for everyday cars?
Okay, so for cars, there's three types of cars. One is your regular car, which is gasoline based, petrol based. Biodiesel is not compatible with petrol. So if you drive for a normal sedan car, unfortunately you can't power it if your car needs to take like the 95, 98 petrol. If you're driving a diesel car, then yes, you can use biodiesel. Diesel car meaning I think quite a few of them European makes. Traditionally, all the old taxis were diesel cars, be it from Toyota, Mercedes Benz. But unfortunately, diesel and petrol cars are getting less popular. People are more talking about EVs. So, but if you do drive a diesel car, yeah, you can potentially use biodiesel, and I mean, you can just drive up today and pump. Although we are not equipped to do retail sales, so our model is always B2B. So we have a minimum order of 1,000 liters. So unless you own a big factory where you can put a 1,000 liter diesel tank and then you can pump at your own leisure. Otherwise, logistically we may not be able to support like a one diesel passenger car business. Yeah.
Hongbin's laughing in the studio. I think she's got grand plans to start up her own biodiesel pump in Singapore. Okay, so I understand that Alpha Biofuels, you also export the technology as well, don't you? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, we did have a pilot plant in Malaysia, and then another plant in Indonesia. But for various reasons, the machine worked for a while, but then it stalled. As in the business stalled. I think it just didn't
Okay.
make sense at that time. That was maybe in the early 2015 to 2018.
Okay.
But now we are again looking at potentially setting up medium-sized plants all over Southeast Asia to make biodiesel. But that is like in a 5 to 10 year plan, not
Yeah,
in the
because if you
instant.
if you look
Yeah,
at energy prices now, Jack, I mean,
yeah,
they're going through the roof. And so if you already have a product that can be converted, it's a product that's a waste product that can then be converted into fuel and energy and used in energy generators. It's interesting, especially perhaps for remote communities that are using cooking oil, if they could then convert that into fuel to be used. Is
yeah.
that the kind
Or
of thing that you're looking at?
exactly, and also because in Singapore we don't really have a food industry, but if you talk about our neighboring countries, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, they've got a very big food industry. So like a Maggi mee factory, for example, they potentially what they produce in a day could be what a restaurant produces in a month. Yeah, so there is a big potential for them to convert that into biodiesel, and they can use it to power their own, agricultural machinery or even their generators if they need additional power.
Oh, Jack mentioned Maggie Me and you got me hungry. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, Jack.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel Hongping.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Jack Ling, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Alpha Biofuels. They are generating power for the F1 weekend this weekend. They're on site and trialing out one generator to see how that will function at the race using biofuels made from used cooking oil. Thanks for joining us today on Facebook. You know what you need to do now? Turn on your radio and listen to the rest of the show. Hongbin's coming up in just a bit with a finance update, and Primetime will be with you at 4 p.m. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
Money FM 89.3. Money FM 89.3.